People in general always require a leader who can teach the public by practical behavior. A leader cannot teach the public to stop smoking if he himself smokes. Lord Chaitanya said that a teacher should behave properly before he begins teaching. One who teaches in that way is called acharya, or the ideal teacher. Therefore, a teacher must follow the principles of Shastra, scripture, to teach the common man. Teacher cannot manufacture rules against the principles of revealed scriptures. The revealed scriptures like Manu Samhita and similar others are considered the standard books to be followed by human society. Thus, the leader's teaching should be based on the principles of such standard shastras. One who desires to improve himself must follow the standard rules as they are practiced by the great teachers. Srimad Bhagavatam also affirms that one should follow the footsteps of great devotees, and that is the way of progress on the path of spiritual realization. The king or the executive head of a state, the father, and the school teachers are all considered to be natural leaders of the innocent people in general. All such natural leaders have a great responsibility to their dependents. Therefore, they must be conversant with the standard books of moral and spiritual codes. Namo Vishnu. So, Yad yadacharya shrestas tatet evetro janaha sayat pramanam kurute lokastad anuvartate. Whatever action a great man takes, common men follow in his footsteps, and whatever standard he sets by his exemplary acts, all the world pursues. So let's begin by offering our obeisances to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paskatyade Satarne. Prabhupada, when he came to Moscow, I believe it was around 1975, he was talking to Professor Kotowski. And Professor Kotowski was not very quick in understanding what our philosophy is. As a matter of fact, when Prabhupada was trying to explain to him that we're not this body, Professor Kotowski could not understand the difference between the body and the soul. And even when Prabhupada was explaining to him about human society should try to create first-class men, Brahmins, Professor Kotowski could not understand that either. So Prabhupada finally explained to Professor Kotowski that ultimately your philosophy and our philosophy are really not different, because according to your philosophy, you have to follow Lenin, and according to our philosophy, we follow Krishna. So the philosophy ultimately is you have to choose someone and follow them. Wherever Lenin has gone, that's where you're going to go, and wherever Krishna has gone, that's where we're going to go. So that you have to decide where you want to go. Similarly, everyone has to choose a leader, as it says in the Mahabharata, Tarko, Apratishta, Shutaya, Vibhina, Yasavarishir, Yasyanavina, Dharmasya Tattvam, Ihitam Guhayam, Mahajano Yena Katasapanta. That generally speaking, everyone in the material world is trying to find out what is the highest realm of happiness? What's the highest truth? And people argue about that. It's called tarka. Someone has one opinion, someone else has another opinion. And everyone is trying to be the topmost intellectual with the best opinion. But it is said apratishta. Although everyone is trying to become the authority, but one authority is constantly being defeated by another authority. As we see in the realm of honest science, everyone is an expert. And even if you go and you get the highest degrees that they have to offer, postdoctorate, still everyone is competing with their own opinion. No one acknowledges that someone else is right. As soon as you become an authority, you have to defeat all the other authorities. Therefore, it's called apratishta. And even if you become the topmost authority in present society, later on, someone will claim that you're completely wrong and that actually they know the truth until someone else comes along and claims that they know the truth. And of course, in the age of Kali Yuga, people decide what the truth is by voting. Of course, if we had an election, probably Krishna wouldn't get the most votes for being the Supreme. In any case, that doesn't mean he's not the Supreme, just because he's not voted into that position. Therefore, tarka apratishta, simply by argument, there is no end to the discussion. Apratishta shrutiya vibhina. And there are many, many books of knowledge. There are 18 Puranas, 6 Puranas in the mode of ignorance, 6 Puranas in the mode of passion, and 6 Puranas for those in the mode of goodness. And they all have a different opinion. There's even a Purana that declares that the topmost authority, the greatest personality in the Ramayana was Ravana. He may have had some problems when he wasn't looking. Lord Ramachandra killed him, but still that doesn't make him any less of a great personality. That Purana is for those in the mode of ignorance. And therefore, we can read the books, and according to what book we're reading, we may get a different opinion. Nastavari Shiryasyani Bina. We know that there are great personalities, and they all differ with each other. Jaimini, Patanjali, Gautama, Astavarakra. They all have their followers, they all have their scriptures, but they differ on what reality is, what the absolute truth is. Nasavari Shiryasyana Dharmasya Tattvam Nihitam Guhayam. That actually the truth is hidden in the heart of a self-realized person. Self-realization means self-effulgent. Just like in Bhagavad Gita, we may accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead or not. But why should we accept Krishna as Supreme? For instance, we can't see how Krishna is necessarily the person who's moving all the planets in their orbits, as Lord Brahma claims. In the Brahma Samhita, it's Chaksha, Esha, Savita, Sakala, Grahanam, Raja Samasta Suramurta, Ashesha Teja, Yasyagaya Brahmati, Sambrita Kalachakro, Govindam Adi Purusham Tamahang Bhajami. He's worshiping Govinda, but why should we worship Govinda? Well, Brahma says he's worshiping Govinda because the sun is one of Krishna's eyes. Now, if you look into someone, you can see that they have 2 eyes, and you can identify those two eyes are part of their body. If we look into the sky and see the sun, we may not identify that particular body as, or that particular fiery planet as Krishna's eye. Or if we look at the moon, we may not identify the moon as Krishna's other eye. Although it's full of infinite effulgence and moves in its orbit, and therefore we can understand that such a powerful entity as the sun must have some controller behind it. Otherwise, how could such a powerful entity full of infinite effulgence be moving exactly in an orbit? Something must be controlling it. Chance doesn't control anything, nor does gravity, so-called gravity, control anything. If you throw a handful of marbles, pebbles in the air, they're not going to circulate around your hand. Matter of fact, they're just going to fall to the earth. And it doesn't matter how much you go outside the Earth's so-called gravity and throw a satellite or a Sputnik in orbit, eventually it comes down. And it's unlikely it's exactly in an orbit. It has to be traced by other mechanisms. But we don't see that it's exactly Krishna who's so powerful that he can keep the sun in exact orbit, so exact that every day the scientists know exactly at what time the sun will rise and exactly what time the sun will go down. Now, we must conclude there must be someone intelligent behind creating such a circumstance, because we don't know what time tomorrow we're going to get up. With all our intelligence, we don't know what time we're going to get out of bed. And with all intelligence, we don't know what time we're going to go to sleep tonight. Exactly. So we can't control even our little body with all our big intelligence. How is it possible that such a big object in the sky, such as the sun, is not being controlled by a supremely intelligent person, supremely powerful person? But still, we don't see Krishna as that person. But if we read Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Denosmi nitha dehe, kaumaram yovanam jara, tata dahantara praptir, dhiryas tatra namuyati. Krishna comes up with rather amazing, refreshing knowledge that's not taught at any university. It wasn't taught to most of us when we went to school, that our bodies are changing. Completely new revelation to most people that their bodies are changing. Of course, it's not a revelation. Everyone knows that their body is changing. They just wish it wasn't changing, that's all. But what they don't know is that we ourselves within the body, we're not changing. It doesn't matter how powerful or how weak we become, doesn't matter how much knowledge we have or how foolish we become, we ourselves within the body always remain the same soul. And therefore, Krishna concludes that even at the final change of this body called death, that we don't die. We simply go on to another body, just like presently. We're in this body, and the body's changing from one body to the next, and we're not changing. Therefore, Krishna says that the final change, we don't change either. It's just a matter of common sense, which is quite uncommon. Now, Krishna, obviously, we respect him because he's giving us perfect knowledge in Bhagavad Gita. I say perfect knowledge, but then someone may doubt whether this is perfect knowledge. But then we just start with, can you accept the fact that your body's changing, but you're not changing. And if someone cannot accept that, then there's no use of explaining further, because if they can't take 1 + 1 and come to the conclusion that it's 2, then it's very difficult to teach them any further mathematics. Still, Krishna outlines many things in Bhagavad Gita. For instance, Dhyato Vishayam Pumsam, Sangas Te Shupajayate, Sangas Sanjayate Kama, Kama Krodo Vijayate, Kroda Bhavati Samoha, Samaha Smriti Vibramsat, Smriti Bramsat Buddhinasho, Buddhinashat Pranashati. Krishna gives perfect psychology. Anyone who doesn't know Krishna's psychology in Bhagavad Gita, he doesn't know psychology. Srila Prabhupada is not very impressed by most of the so-called psychiatrists and psychologists. Even Srila Prabhupada personally, he had one of his sons was mentally disturbed. And Srila Prabhupada took him to psychiatrists, and they couldn't do anything to help. One day his son just wandered away, and they never found him again. So Srila Prabhupada was not very much impressed by the so-called psychiatrists or psychologists. But in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives perfect psychology. Of course, the majority of people in the material world are trained not to appreciate such type of psychology, because Krishna begins by contemplating the objects of the senses. A person develops attachment for them. And from such attachment, lust develops. Well, people don't mind developing lust. That sounds all right. Matter of fact, lust is what they consider is the primary inspiration for their activities in the material world. And therefore, if you want to sell something, you sell something by invoking people's lust. The majority of the advertisements in the world are not of old, diseased people trying to sell you something. They're generally of young, attractive people trying to invoke your desire for sense gratification in relationship to that object. That if you buy this toothpaste and you brush your teeth with it, when you smile, all the ladies will fall at your feet saying, "Oh, Sadhu, what can I do for you?" And if you put this special odorant underneath your arm, then everyone will come and say there's something that's irresistible. Everyone will come to you and say, there's something irresistible about you. I can't figure it out. Therefore, everyone is interested in how I can act in such a way or appear in such a way as to attract others by increasing their material desire for me, either gross or subtle. Therefore, lust is greatly appreciated in present society. And indeed, if people are not lusty, then they become depressed. But Krishna says lust doesn't stop there. As soon as we become lusty, Krishna says psychologically, if we satisfy lust, which is never satisfied according to Bhagavad Gita, then we have to become greedy to try to satisfy the lust that will inherently arise immediately after trying to satisfy the lust. It's like pouring gasoline on a fire. When gasoline is poured on a fire, for some time the fire will be seen to not blaze anymore. But then, after some time, the fire will blaze again, but even more ferociously than it was blazing before. One may try and satisfy one's lust, but kamarinam katida palitas dorni deshas. In so many different ways, everyone is trying to satisfy their material desire, but material desire is not satisfied, nor is it ever merciful to us, nor does it ever embarrass us. Generally speaking, whatever we do to satisfy our material desires, we find some excuse, some reason for it, some justification for it. Therefore, greed will eventually arise. And as a matter of fact, those who are most greedy in the material world are considered to be the heroes of present society. Greed may take many different ways. Those who have the most money, or as Prahlad Maharaj said, money, money, sweeter than honey. That everyone will risk even their dear lives to get money. Professional soldier, the thief, and the merchant, they'll do anything to get money. Because money, as it says, money can't buy you love, but it could put down a good down payment on it. Therefore, the people who are the most greedy for money, they're considered to be the heroes of present society. If they interview someone on television, on the radio, in the newspaper, on the internet, it's generally people who have some material opulence. Now, money is one opulence, which can buy all the other opulences, but people who are greedy for some achievement in the material world are considered to be the heroes of material society. Now, no matter how foolish their achievement is, if one can take a stick and hit a little ball into a hole, then one is considered a great acharya of modern society and will be awarded all kinds of wealth and prestige. They'll ask him about such a person about world events, just because they can take a little stick or a big stick and hit a ball and it goes into the hole. Or one can take a bigger ball and throw it through a hoop, a net, then one is considered to be an amazingly empowered personality. Or I guess in Europe especially, if one has a very strong foot and can kick a ball for a long period into a net, and then finally the ball arrives at a net, then everyone will clamor to have that person's association. So this kind of greed doesn't stop there, because eventually someone grows old, no longer can they satisfy their senses, or they lose their money because someone steals it one way or another, or they lose their objects of sense gratification and they become frustrated or angry. Prabhupada says in India, aristocratic people, they have a big, big feast prepared. And all their friends and relatives sit at the dinner table. But because they're old and they've misused their senses for so long, they have no appetite. And therefore, they simply look at the food and admire it and then go home. And then the servants come and eat everything. One is trying to gratify the senses by lust and by greed, and eventually anger comes. So this is real philosophy, this is real psychology. But it doesn't stop at anger, because lust, anger, greed, they create delusion. They create a whole atmosphere in which we justify our activities, which we, if anything goes wrong, we give the blame to others. This is called delusion. And the main delusion, of course, is that I'm this body, that I am actually can influence the whole world by my will. that somehow or another, if I have the intelligence, I can control everything. Just like Krishna Maharaj was a temple commander in Los Angeles around 1969. And one day he was talking with Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada said that in the spiritual world, there is a planet called Goloka Vrindavan, that it's so big that all the Vaikuntha planets fit into that one planet. And each Vaikuntha planet, of which there are unlimited numbers of them, is so big that all the universes could fit into that one Vaikuntha planet, all the material universes. But sometimes in the spiritual world, a little cloud appears, and in that cloud, Krishna expands himself as Karanadakashai Vishnu and lies down on the causal ocean, on Sheshanaga, and by his breathing and through the pores of his body, universes expand. And there are so many universes that there are more universes than there are seeds of mustard in a huge mustard bag. If you know how small a mustard seed is, then you can understand that there are practically unlimited planets, material planets, universes, not planets, just universes in this little small part of the spiritual world. And in the smallest, in all the universes, Garbhodakashai Vishnu expands himself, or Karanadakashai Vishnu expands himself as Garbhodakashai Vishnu and rests in each universe. And in the smallest of all the universes, Brahma sprouts a lotus flower from his navel, and on top of that lotus flower, Lord Brahma is born with 4 heads. Because Lord Brahmas are born in every universe with different amounts of heads, sometimes with 4 heads, sometimes with 40 heads, sometimes with 400 heads, sometimes with 4 million heads. But we have the honor of being born in the smallest universe. And as everyone knows, we're small but beautiful. That we have at least a distinction of being the smallest. We have some distinction. And in that lotus flower, in the stem of that lotus flower, Lord Brahma constructs all the planets, who are floating like specks of dust in the air. And in one part of the universe called Bhumandala, there's a part of Bhumandala which we call this Earth planet, which is part of Jambudvip, or better known as for us as Bharatvarsha. So in one part of that, there's one little tiny section called Bharatvarsha, in which we're living in a little part of Bharatvarsha. And in Bharatvarsha, there are so many continents that we know of. And one of those continents, Prabhupada said, is North America. And North America has a number of countries. One of them is the United States, which has a number of states. One of them is called California. And in California, there are many cities. One of them is called Los Angeles. In Los Angeles, there are many streets. One of them is called La Cienega Boulevard. And on La Cienega Boulevard, there are hundreds and perhaps thousands of houses. And one of them is called the Hare Krishna Temple. And in the Hare Krishna Temple, there's one temple commander named Tamal Krishna Maharaj, Tamal Krishna, and he thinks he's controlling everything. So this is the material world. Everyone is thinking they're going to become a big, big controller of the universe, big controller of this material energy. But ultimately, we're all under the dictation of the material energy. But due to delusion, we think we're ourselves to be much more important, much more the center of attention, much more the center of the universe than is actually real. Whether we get up in the morning or not, I can guarantee you the sun will get up. And even if we sleep late, the sun will not go down later. We're not really in control as much as we actually think we are. But due to this delusion that we're faced, therefore, we're placed into a situation where we can't remember what we heard. Our memories are taken away by the illusory energy, and therefore, the reality of our situation is forgotten very easily. Just like Daksha, after his offense against Lord Shiva, was born again in another millennium. And this time, he also had the desire to fulfill his duty of propagating the universe. And he understood, because he was a very learned personality, that the only way you could actually properly perform one's duty is by worshiping Krishna or Vishnu. So he chanted very wonderful prayers to Vishnu, glorifying Lord Vishnu, much more wonderful than we can imagine, because Vishnu actually came riding on the back of Garuda. Now, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Daksha is not given he's not praised very much because his offenses against Lord Shiva, but obviously he was not an ordinary personality. Otherwise, how could he recite prayers that would actually attract the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Now, if you don't think Daksha was an exalted personality, try to chant some prayers to Krishna and look out the window and see if Vishnu is going to come riding on the back of Garuda, along with the demigods. Now, if he doesn't come, we should understand we have some improvement in our devotional service before we can come to the standard of Daksha's chanting prayers. In any case, Daksha chanted the prayers, and Lord Vishnu came riding in the back of Garuda, along with all the principal demigods, and Daksha was so ecstatic that he sat down because he couldn't stand up completely due to the ecstasy of experiencing Krishna's presence. Finally, when Lord Vishnu asked him what kind of benediction he wanted, Lord Daksha said, forgot the ecstasy that he was under, forgot that he could have asked to go back to the spiritual kingdom. Instead, he asked, my dear Lord, please give me the ability to have unlimited sex life. So that's called forgetfulness. You could ask for some benediction, but instead you ask for something which is relatively insignificant. So he's not the only one who sometimes gets into a state of forgetfulness. We ourselves may be sometimes very ecstatic after performing some sadhana or devotional service, a nice kirtan, and then afterwards we forget. And we wonder, how is it that I could have forgotten? Because it doesn't take much in the material world. As soon as we contemplate the objects of the senses, then lust is followed by greed, which is followed by anger, which is followed by delusion, which is followed by forgetfulness of actually reality to some degree or another. And when we can't remember then we can't assimilate. There's nothing to assimilate. We wind up thinking that everything is void or something like that, just like the scientists. They cannot assimilate real knowledge. And therefore, they've lost their spiritual intelligence. They cannot understand anything so simple that the body changes, but the person who's experiencing the body from boyhood to youth to old age is not changing. They themselves are that person, but because they've lost their intelligence and because they can't remember their childhood or their boyhood or anything, they can't remember anything. Therefore, they believe that they're changing when the body's changing. So they've lost their intelligence along with their memory because of delusion. And what's the result? The result, we fall into the material pool. That's called aparad. We commit offenses. Apa means against, and rada, against rada. So any activity where we're competing against Krishna to become the Lord's material nature is considered an aparad, something against pure devotional service. And we lose the shelter of the eternal energy. Therefore, as it says, Mahadno Yena Kata Sapanta, Tarako, Apratishta, Shutiya Vibina, Yasavarishya Yasyana Vinam, Dharmasya Tatvam Nihitam Guhayam, Mahadno Yena Kata Sapanta. If we really want to find the truth, which everyone wants to find, everyone's looking for the truth in some way or another. Everyone's looking to find out how to be as happy as possible for as long as possible. And everyone is choosing their leader. In the mode of ignorance, one will choose Ravana as a leader. Ravana was not without followers. He was quite popular in Lanka. Similarly, Hiranyakashipu, he had a whole lot of followers too. When Lord Nrsingadev killed Hiranyakashipu, Lord Nrsingadev had to spend the rest of the day killing Hiranyakashipu's followers because they were quite upset that their leader had been killed. Because after all, as Prahlad Maharaj said, he was a Surya Varya. Tatsado Manye Surya Varya De, he was the best of all the demons. Everyone is trying to become a leader, and we can become a leader in the mode of ignorance. If we're in the mode of ignorance, then we'll choose someone in the mode of ignorance as our leader. For instance, previously, music used to be devotional. Then music turned something into the mode of goodness. Then music turned into the mode of passion with the Rolling Stones, et cetera, well, maybe ignorance too. And now it's becoming more and more ignorant. If you listen to the lyrics, they don't make any sense because all the people that are listening to it are nonsense. And therefore, as society degrades, therefore their leaders also become more and more degraded. As it says, Swavit Brahostra Karar, Samstuta Purusha Pashu, Niyat Karna Patiyopeta, Jata Nama Gadagraja. That men who are like hogs and dogs and camels and asses, they glorify the bigger hog, the bigger dog, the bigger camel, and the bigger ass. But they never glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead who's carrying a club. Now, of course, Krishna, he's not envious of anyone, nor is Shukadeva Goswami, who recited this verse, Nor Srila Prabhupada sometimes would quote these verses, but people are like dogs nowadays. They get an education and they go door to door begging, my dear master, I am a very good dog. No matter what you tell me to do, I'll wag my tail and I'll faithfully do it. I have my degree from the university, which guarantees that I become a faithful dog to anyone to any master who accepts me. And those who are like hogs, dogs, hogs. So a hog will eat anything. They'll sleep anytime that's possible. Prabhupada gives the example that in India, there are persons who are messengers. They run documents from one place to another and deliver messages. That was one of the few jobs I ever had during this lifetime. I was a messenger on Wall Street because my uncle was a broker. So he got me a job when I was in college as a messenger on Wall Street. And I just take documents from one office to another. Whereas in India, there are messengers, and they take the document and they go to the park and fall asleep for 5 hours. And they wake up and deliver the document, come back 6 hours, 7 hours later. And the boss would say, my dear messenger, why did it take you 7 hours? Oh, it was so busy, you can't believe it. There's so much traffic, I had so much problems. I mean, I need some rest. Maybe you can give me the day off. So people, they think if I can sleep an extra 4 hours, that's for my gain. Like a hog will sleep anywhere, he'll eat anything. And sex, they're completely liberated. There's no inhibition. You never find a hog is embarrassed by whatever sex life it's performing in public. And as far as defending it may not know karate, but it's very enthusiastic to defend the best it can. And generally speaking, most living entities are not interested in attacking hogs. They're interested in getting away from a hog. So those were like hogs, dogs, camels, and asses. Camel means that if there's some thorns, then the camel likes to eat them. Now, most of us wouldn't pick thorns off a tree and eat them. But the camel is very enthusiastic to do it because it doesn't realize that when it eats the thorns, its tongue gets cut and it drinks blood. And the camel really likes the taste of its own blood. So that's compared to a person who likes to enjoy unlimited sense gratification, which in fact is drinking their own blood. And ass means the ass, there's a carrot that's attached to the head of the ass, and it pulls a very heavy load on behalf of the washerman, thinking that when I take one step forward, then I'm a little closer to the carrot, but it notices that the carrot moves one step also. Although it's suffering, pulling this heavy load, still it's thinking, if I just take one more step, then I'll get the carrot and it'll be worth it, pulling this heavy burden on my back to get it. So all day long, the washerman is pushing the ass forward, and the ass is going forward, carrying the heavy load on its back, thinking only one more step remains and I'll get the carrot. I thought it was a little closer, but I was wrong. It's still one step in front of me. And then at the end of the day, the washerman takes the heavy load off the ass's back and allows the ass to eat the grass below its feet. So that's compared to the foolish worker who's working so hard to make money in order to just get some simple foodstuff to eat and a place to sleep. He could have grown his own food with minimum effort, had a minimal place to construct a minimal house for sleeping, and could have saved the rest of the time for performing devotional service. But instead, he's completely absorbed in working hard for practically nothing. So these personalities, the hog, the dog, the camel, the ass, when they see that there's a bigger hog, a more advanced camel, a more advanced ass or dog, then they glorify them as leaders of their lives, of the acharya that they want to follow. But when they hear about the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his devotees, they're uninterested. Although Krishna is the source of all opulence, he can give us everything we need. As a matter of fact, he is giving us everything we need. We're thinking that these personalities are wonderful, they're fantastic, they do amazing things, but actually they're simply instruments for Krishna's energy. They're all doing it because of the intelligence that Krishna is providing, plus the energy Krishna supplies all the ability of man, everything. But they don't see that actually it's Krishna who's the doer, that Krishna who's the actual friend of everyone, Krishna who's the actual enjoyer of everything, that Krishna is the actual controller of everything. Therefore, they glorify others who are actually insignificant, and the actual person who's the most significant, they're completely either envious of or forgetful of. Therefore, one should try to choose someone, in the mode of passion, of course, one chooses someone who's so-called big enjoyer of the material world, able to get resources to gratify the senses, but how much can we actually gratify our senses? And how happy are the people who are so-called the leaders in the mode of passion? And in the mode of goodness, of course, one is more peaceful. One is not so much interested in controlling the material world or enjoying it. One is interested in appreciating it. But still, even one in the mode of goodness, if they perform any sinful activity, they may wind up taking a body in the mode of ignorance. Just like King Riga, he was in the mode of goodness, practically, although he was a great king. He was in the mode of goodness. Still, he committed one little mistake. He gave away a cow to one Brahmin. The cow wandered back into his herd, and he gave it away to another Brahmin. And those two Brahmins fought with each other over that cow. And ultimately, although King Riga promised each one of them 10,000 cows, 100,000 cows in exchange for that one cow, still they wound up cursing him, so he became a lizard in his next lifetime. Although he had given away more cows in charity to qualified Brahmins than there are stars in the sky or grains of sand on the beach, although he had dug wells and created opportunities for people who were on pilgrimage to get shelter, although he was such a pious king, his next lifetime was that of a lizard. So does anyone want to follow King Riga? It's not necessary. There are plenty of lizards. We don't have to join the lizard community. Therefore, dharmasya tattvam nihitam guhayam. One should choose a personality who actually knows Krishna, such as Srila Prabhupada, and follow him. If we follow such a personality as Srila Prabhupada and his instructions, and the literature that Krishna has given us, and we follow the example of Prabhupada's, those who are following Prabhupada's example, if we learn to discriminate how much and to what degree, and appreciate how devotees are following Prabhupada's example and repeating his instructions, and appreciate those examples and follow them, then we can make progress towards ourselves, realizing we're eternal. What could be a better, if someone comes and says, I'd like to give you a gift, would you like $1 million? Or would you like to be eternal? Eternally in bliss. You think, well, could you make it $2 million? I think most of us with any intelligence would probably choose to be eternally in bliss. So this is what Prabhupada's giving us. This is what Prabhupada, as a representative of Krishna, is giving us an opportunity to become, and it's up to us to have the intelligence to appreciate it. And also the discrimination, so that we know, as Maharaj Rishabdev said to his sons, Gurur na sasyat, svajano na sasyat, pita na sasyat, sarjanani na sasyat, daivam na sasyat, svajano na patis na sasyan, namochiyat kyat sumupetim rityur. One who cannot deliver his dependence from the path of repeated birth and death should never become a spiritual master, a relative, a father, a husband, a mother, or a worshipful demigod. So whatever we're doing, we should take shelter of Krishna's instructions as they're given to us by Prabhupada in the Vedic literature, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, which can teach us how we, whatever position we have, whether it be a mother, a father, a husband, a spiritual master, or worshipful demigod, how we can help those who are following us become free from birth and death, those who have responsibility. Otherwise, then we'll be misleading them. Andaya tandira, upagayamanas te piksha tantra urudami bada. If we don't know what Krishna, how Krishna wants us to perform our duties, and we do them blindly, then we're blind, and those who follow us are also blind, and the result is that we'll all get ourselves into difficulty, birth after birth. The conclusion is we have to choose a leader. We should choose the best leader. Our society has chosen Srila Prabhupada as the leader, and in proportion to one's ability, one's conviction, one's seriousness, one's surrender to Srila Prabhupada, then one also becomes a leader. And such leaders we should follow so that we can come to the standard that Prabhupada has given us, that Prabhupada was on, that we always remember Krishna with devotion in the spirit of service, and we never forget him or deviate from the instructions coming down from our acharyas and disciple succession. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Any questions?
Yes, Гуру Махарадж. Мадхаджа Лавангалата, или могли бы вы, пожалуйста, зачитать там в чате, вот в Телеграм, есть вопросы два от Мадхаджи Анастасии.
Yes, so Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. So the first question is, what will be the highest benefit for me? And the second question is, may I go to the to the place where they distribute food for life for the Ukrainians coming from the other side, and will this be considered a service to my guru?
She live in Crimea and won't go to Ukraine distribute prasad, and ask, is it good?
Will it be
Скажите,
considered a
пожалуйста,
service to you?
русского переводчика нет. Русская. Oh, no, that's not the question. Что
Maharaj, this
я
question
могу
is
найти
actually.
Guru Maharaj, you hear Mataji Lavangalata in Zoom?
Yeah.
Can you
The
hear me?
first question is, what's the highest benefit? First question
Yes,
is,
correct, yes.
develop love for Krishna. There can't be any higher benefit than that. Krishna is our friend. He's our best friend. And as we surrender to him, he takes charge of our existence. This material world, especially in Kali Yuga, is a very dangerous place. Unless we accept the shelter of Krishna, there's every possibility of becoming deviated by the other shelter, which would be very unfortunate, especially in Kali Yuga. 1 second, please. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada is especially present with us in the form of his books, in the form of his instructions, the tapes, his videos, and also in the form of his devotees who have seriously applied within their lives his instructions and have gotten the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and Krishna, and have understood the science of Krishna consciousness to different degrees. So we should become the servants of Prabhupada, servants of Prabhupada's servants, and this way we can come to the platform of becoming eligible to get Krishna's mercy, so that Krishna will reveal himself to us and we can begin actual life in Krishna consciousness. As far as going to the Ukraine to distribute food, I hope it's not necessary. There is plenty of people in Ukraine distributing food. Basically speaking, our real purpose, even in distributing food, is to help people become Krishna conscious. So rather than risk our lives unnecessarily, we should spend our lives somehow or another preaching the message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wherever we are. And if we're so empowered or something that we can save others, well, that would be one thing. But just out of sentiment, we shouldn't just go here and there, especially in dangerous places. When wherever we are, we can do the best service by helping people become Krishna conscious, distributing the holy name if possible, if not to others, at least to our family, to our friends, distributing Prabhupada's books, distributing prasadam wherever we are. And if we can support somehow or another without putting ourselves in unnecessary danger, other devotees in other places, that's also very nice. But we should work according to our capacity, not according to simply our sentiment. Is that all right?